Right, okay, welcome to our latest video on this channel, and today we're going to have a look at this PlayStation 4, which has a rather interesting problem. Now this was sent to me to have a look at because the interesting problem that it has is quite a strange one, and I've not seen it mentioned anywhere before, either on the net or in person or anywhere really, so we're going to be learning as we go on this one. And basically to give you a bit of background on it, it was sent to me originally because apparently what was happening is the machine would start up to a blue light of death. So you power it on, the light would flick on for a couple of seconds and then it would go out again until a DualShock 4 controller was plugged in, and then what would happen was that the machine would power up into the OS, to the main menu, but as soon as you put a game disc in, the machine would die, and that would be your lot. So it's a rather strange one. Now when I actually got this, the lad who gave it me has put a note in with it. Didn't make any mention of the controller having to be plugged in on the note. He just said that when a game disc goes in, the machine powers itself off. Now I had a quick look at this last night when it arrived with me, and we'll just get you a little bit closer just to sort of see if we could get it to repeat what he claims it's doing. Now when I actually plugged it in, I got a slightly different result, so it didn't seem to matter whether a joypad was plugged in or not. The machine started up every time into the main menu and behaved itself quite nicely, and you know, I could also put a game disc in it and it wouldn't switch off. It would actually start the game up quite happily. I could feed discs in, I could eject them, they all seemed to work quite nicely. The only time I could actually get the machine to fault was actually when the machine was completely off. So whilst it was in standby mode with the yellow light, it behaved impeccably well, but as soon as the power was turned completely off, if you tried to power the machine up by placing a disc in, you would get a blue light for a second and then the power would die, and that would be it until you unplug the machine. So today we're going to give it another go, because of course it's been sat off back in its box with no power on it for the last 24 hours. So we're going to see if we can maybe replicate a little bit more accurately what's going on here. So after all, we can only fix what we can see. So what we're going to do is, I've got the console plugged into HDMI on the monitor, so all I need to do is plug the power in, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, so power is applied, so we're just going to try and start this machine up now. You see there's no joypad at all plugged in here, so hopefully this is just going to start up normally like it was yesterday. And indeed it is. And further to our last video, I've also made sure that the console this time is plugged into HDMI 1, because for some reason these monitors default back to HDMI 1 whenever any input you're watching on any of the other inputs goes off, and then never switches itself back. So it's a slightly strange setup, but nevertheless that shouldn't affect us today. So as you can see, we've got the thing back up on the screen there, so I'm going to plug this controller in and sync it. You can see that. So as you can see, we're in the menu. Just going to disconnect the controller. You can still see we're synced. So from this point on, we're going to remove the USB and we're just going to work across the wireless. Now last night I tried FIFA 14 in here, and once again it would appear that FIFA 14 is going to work quite nicely. Okay, the disc is recognised. I'm going to hit X to start. And that appears to be working quite nicely. Now I do notice the two games that he's got on there are FIFA 15 and Call of Duty Ghosts. I do have Ghosts, but it's currently lent out to a friend, and unfortunately I don't have FIFA 15 to test it with, and I won't provide with either of those titles, so whether it's just those two particular discs or not, I don't know. But as you can see, that seems to be working quite nicely. I can eject the disc, put the disc back in, I can eject the disc again. Try to hesitate the disc load. As you can see, doesn't seem to be a problem. As I say, I had a game on this last night. I had it on for about an hour, see if I could get this to fault, and I couldn't. And at first I was wondering whether actually it had managed to phantomly fix itself in between actually the lad dropping it off to me and finding the issues. But nevertheless, so this one here is Advanced Warfare, so we're going to try this in here. And again, it would appear it accepted the disc quite nicely. And that's now installing the prerequisites, so we're going to reject that. Once again, everything is working quite nicely. Now the only way, like I say, I could get this to fault was, well, we'll just put it into rest mode at the moment, because last night, again, this worked perfectly fine. So it goes into rest mode. Okay, and then we're going to put a disc in. So the same FIFA 14 as earlier. Machine starts up, takes the disc. Going to reconnect the controller. As you can see, and we didn't get that last night. It does seem to be clicking around a little bit, so I don't think the optical unit is in the best shape. So there's a little bit of dust on the machine, so it may have been in the back of a TV cabinet, and this disc isn't the cleanest either, so we'll just try that again. As you can see, takes the disc. There we go. It's a strange issue, because watch this now. I'm going to shut this machine down completely. So press and hold will turn the machine off completely rather than take it to standby. So I'll just give this a couple of seconds just to shut down, and there we go. Now watch what happens when I try and put this FIFA 14. Same disc as before. Just watch. Now every time last night I tried that, guess what? It failed. Every time. It's because we're filming it. It's because it's on camera and it knows that it's being watched. It's the only reason it's done that. So we'll turn it off again and try it again. Now then, as I say, last night when I had a look at this, it seemed to be behaving itself perfectly well. I had an hour's worth of gaming on it, and like I say, I tried doing what we're doing again here, and suddenly, like I say, the only time I could get it to fault was in the off position like this. So it may be over amount of time when it heats up. Something inside there isn't the happiest of bunnies. So again, that's going to start up again. So I think maybe what we're going to have to do is maybe leave this on for a little while like we did last night, playing to itself, maybe have a quick game of FIFA, and then we might have to come back and just try that again and just see if we can get this to fault, because at the moment it's behaving itself. But when I was given this, it was sort of made out that it did it religiously. I have to say that since I've had it, aside from last night when it was kind of misbehaving, sort of, but most of the time behaving quite nicely, it would appear that it's a bit of an intermittent one, which is going to make it even harder. So let's try it again, just in case. It's going to behave every time now, isn't it? So what we're going to do is we're going to leave this on for a little while. I'm going to have a quick game on it, I think. I'm going to warm it up and we're going to see what happens once we finish, and see if we can't get the fault to display, and then we can have a look and see what's going on. So I'll be back in a sec. Alright then, boys and girls, welcome back, and back here with our faulty PlayStation, or supposedly faulty PlayStation. Now I've had this on for about 10-15 minutes, had a quick kick about on FIFA, and shut it down, and just then managed to get it to do it. So hopefully this time it's going to do it on camera. So again, you can see we're completely off, we're not in standby, we're not in mess mode, we're not in anything. FIFA 14 disc, in we go. I don't believe this. I swear off camera that just misbehaved itself. Ah, oh, dear me. But either way, it definitely seems to be a heat related issue or something along those lines. It's obviously something that happens once it's been on a little while, because as I say, once it was cold, it behaved itself every time. Same last night. Exactly the same last night. When I first plugged this in, I couldn't get it to misbehave. Once it had been on an hour, the only way I could get it to misbehave is in the state that I said it would do. So once the power was completely off. Now whether once it's maybe been left on rest mode for say a couple of hours and it's warmed up a little bit more, so here we go again. Ah, hey, there we go. Hopefully you saw that. without my arm being in the way. But you notice the light blinked straight on, went back off. So I get our disc again, and as you'll notice this time, nothing, dead as a doornail. So I'm just going to pull the power. You'll notice that eject, nothing, power, nothing, press and hold power, nothing. Now what I didn't try last night actually was, when it's in this state, whether a good old USB joypad plugged in actually will make it fire up. Let's see. Because originally this is what he said it would do, so let's just try power. No. Let's try power it up from the controller. It's drawing power. Well, it's not drawing power, it's not charging. It's not switching the machine on. It's almost as if that USB isn't connected. It's trying to find the machine and can't. Try it on a different port. Light's gone out. It's flashing. Nothing from the machine. We'll just unplug that. We'll unplug it from the mains. We'll plug it back in. Get our disc. Right. So as you can see, we've got a bit of a strange problem. Now last night, every time without fail, I could get that to happen. So it would appear that it's intermittently booting tonight, so what a strange problem. It is a strange one, so let's just remove that disc again. Oop. Just power that off. Now it doesn't seem to matter what I do when it's on. Once it's booted, it seems to behave itself perfectly fine. It's only when it's in standby, sorry, not standby, it's only when the power is off. When it's in standby, at least yet to date, I haven't managed to get it to do it. Now the interesting thing is that it is starting to manifest the issue that it was originally sent in with. Let's see. That's going to behave. So it is a very, very strange issue. It's only every now and again. It seems to get worse as it warms up. It seems to be fine from cold. Only seems to do it when the power's off. So and that schematics is hard to say, but as you can see, just managed to do it again. It's completely dead now. So we're going to unplug. Unplug back in. I'm going to start the machine. Tell you what, no, we're not. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that again. And it's still dead. Took a couple of seconds to wake up that time. Just trying to feel across the top. It doesn't feel overly warm. It does feel slightly warm at the rear, over where the power supply is, but not overly so. Not overly warm. I'll try and put the disc back in now. Yeah. So it would appear that the only time that this issue is manifesting itself is when the machine is completely off. When it's in rest mode, it's fine. Once the power's totally off, that is when it seems to exhibit it, and it only seems to be doing it once the machine is warm. So it would appear that it's only in a certain power state. i.e. when it's completely off, and when it's been on a little while. Once it's up and running, it seems to be, to me at least, completely fine, without too much of an issue. And it's not every time, so it's a very strange issue. So what we're going to do, I think, is we've seen that it does it. We've seen that it's pretty hit and miss, but it does do it once it's warmed up. So what we're going to do is we'll crack this open, and we'll take a quick look and see what we can see. Right, okay, so welcome back. We've got the original power supply here from that PlayStation 4 on our table, and as I say, it's taken quite some time to sort of get it to replicate that fault. I actually got over an hour's worth of footage trying to capture that issue the other night. So as you see there, we actually chopped it down a little bit, so I'll give you the highlights of what we tried. So hopefully that was enough to show you the issue without actually having to make you sit through an hour's worth of clip. But anyway, this is the original power supply out of that PlayStation, and what I ended up doing was is taking this apart and having a look underneath, and what we'll do is we will just go through how you do that. So you'll notice that this is the power supply, and underneath you've got a couple of screws. Got one there, there's one that lives down here. And then you've got a whole series of clips on the inside edge there, this you know, around here and around the back. You've got this sort of foam tape around a couple of the edges there, which just sort of helps seat it in inside the PlayStation. You'll just need to slit across there where the panels join, and then remove the screws, and the whole thing just unclips. And what we'll do is we will unclip that now for you, and we'll let you have a look underneath the hood of this, and we'll go through what I think is causing our issue. So come back in a sec, guys. Okay then, so we got the actual board outside of the case of that PSU, and the one thing I did notice when I actually looked over this board was it looked actually very clean. There was no obvious signs of burn marks, no components which looked blown, nothing which looked sort of out of place. All the fuses and everything checked out okay. We measured the caps and everything else, and they all seemed good. But the one thing that did sort of perk my interest was that you could hear a click, like a relay clicking, when this thing turned on and off. And the interesting thing is that, as I say, the best part of the time this thing actually worked okay. You know, but it's only when it was warm and in a certain power state. So that got me thinking, well, basically this thing's working, right? I mean, it's providing power to us and we can game on it and we can do everything else. It's just in this one specific sort of circumstance where the thing falls over. So is the issue actually physical, or is it more of a logic problem? So I actually looked over a few of the chips on this board, and there was one which actually perked my interest, and the one which perked my interest was this one here. Now the reason why that one perked my interest is because this is actually a Fairchild Semiconductor DNP015, and that does all kinds of different things. That basically regulates your power supply, so it does all sorts of things like current overload protection, thermal protection. It does all sorts of stuff. I've actually linked the data sheet for this chip in the comments at the bottom of this video. And that got me thinking, well, you know, if you actually look at the internal block diagram of that chip in that schematic, sorry, in that data sheet, you will see that there is an awful lot of things that one little chip does to regulate this power supply. And if just one area of that circuit is slightly out of specification, are we going to get some strange behaviour? Now, I actually tried to find a couple of these chips, and I actually had to go hunting in the US for these, so these have taken a couple of weeks to get here. So what we're going to do is we are going to swap out this DNP015. These two chips here cost me the grand total of £4.50 delivered from the States, so they were a couple of quid each. So for the sake of what they are, and like I say, the actual functionality of these and what these do on that power supply make me think that they indeed could be the very reason why we're getting some slightly odd behaviour. So we're going to change that now, and then we'll put this back in the PS4 and we'll stick it on FIFA for an hour, and we'll have another go and we'll see if we can get it to fail. Hopefully not. Hopefully this is going to fix our issue. So we're just going to go and replace this now, and we'll see you back here in a sec. Okay then, so in order to replace these chips, we've got the air extraction on, so it might be a little bit noisy, but we're just going to flip this board over, and the points we're interested in are here. So 4 legs here, and there's another 4 here, so we're just going to desolder those now. So make sure your irons are nice and hot. I'm just going to get a bit of flux on these pins. As you can see, with a bit of flux and a bit of quality braid, all the legs on that side of the chip now are completely loose. And don't do the other side now. Not forgetting the orientation of this chip either. And there we go. So we're just going to put a replacement in here, so we're just going to drop that through the holes. Now then, on new components they usually do bend the legs out slightly, so you do usually just have to bend them in again slightly. So now that's nice and flush and we're happy we've got it orientated the right way. I'm just going to drop a little bit of solder onto the first leg. I'll just hold that in position. fair, I'm using completely the wrong tip size for this job as well. But that is that, and if we flip this back over now, as you can see, our replacement chip is now soldered into position, and we're going to reassemble this power supply now, just by clipping the case back on, putting them 2 screws back in, and then we'll put this in the PlayStation and see if it works. Okay, so our power supply now is clipped back together, and what we're going to do is we're going to pop this back in the PlayStation now. So literally just clip the case back on. The one thing you do have to watch is just the actual plug sits in a little recess inside there, so just make sure that goes back in properly. And then, as I say, you just drop your 2 screws back in through the hole there and the one just by the plug there. And then, like I say, you should be good to go. So we're going to go reassemble this, put it back in the PlayStation, and have a go and see if it works. Right, okay, so we've reassembled everything now, and I've had this on for a little while, so this is quite warm at the moment. And like I say, we've been having a couple of games of FIFA on this for the last hour or so, and we're just going to see what it does. So we're going to pop this disc in. As you can see, the machine's off at the moment. So as I say, this machine's quite warm now, so this is in exactly the same circumstances which we were using it in the other night, so it's fairly warm now. It's up to temperature anyway. So I've off camera tried putting this disc in around 5 or 6 times now without issue. Of course, we were playing FIFA. Just going to power everything off. Everything's off, disc back in. So as you can see there now with this power supply, that's the 8th time now since I've warmed this up. I've inserted this from standby, and we've not had an issue. And like I say, it's nice, the temperature now, it's nice and warm. And there we go, so we'll do it another couple of times. But it looks like I'm more or less happy to call this fixed. So, as I say, what we've learned there is that in this particular instance, the power supply was more or less behaving as we would have expected it to. So we got power, you know, we have the system up and running. From standby, it So from the sleep mode it was fine, powered on it was fine, but when it was powered off and we tried to insert a disc to power the unit on, only in those very specific circumstances would this machine actually fault, and the power supply would trip to the point that the only way to recover it would be to actually pull the power and reinsert the plug, which obviously resets all the circuitry internally and then allows us to use the console. But as I say, what this little thing has done is using that and it only being in a certain power state from a very certain condition. So once it's doing a full boot of the system effectively from a cold start, you know, there's no power of anything to it, and having to initialize the disk drive is probably the scenario where the console is drawing the most amount of current, which in this instance appears to have been enough to trip this little protection IC just here into thinking that the console was doing something it shouldn't, and having spotted those shenanigans, it shuts the machine down to prevent any damage to itself or harm to you as you're touching it or whatever else you're doing. So it would appear that swapping that little IC on that power supply has been enough to resolve our issue. So for anybody who gets this strange issue themselves, what you need to do is get yourself over to, I think if I remember rightly, I got these off eBay from a US seller. Couldn't find any in the UK at all. Farnell, CPC, Maplin, you know, any sort of component suppliers like that, couldn't find any. So I had to go on eBay and get from a US supplier. These two chips cost me £4.50 shipped to the UK, turned up within around a week. And as I say, the issue certainly appears to be with this power supply. So we've replaced that IC. As I say, we had a look at the data sheets, and we spotted that this little chip here was responsible for, basically, it's like a watchdog chip for the entire power supply. If it spots anything it doesn't like with regards to current capacity, current draw, temperature, it basically shuts the power supply off. It sits on the back end of one of those little transformers basically and monitors what it's doing. If it doesn't like it, it shuts the output off to it. Is essentially how that's working. So that is what that does, and like I say, in this circumstance, replacing that little DNP015 IC has been enough to resurrect our PlayStation here. And as you can see there, we've put that disc in now. I did it a few times, 5 times off camera. Just did it another 4 or 5 times there on camera. It's nice and warm. As I say, that now appears to be behaving itself lovely. And as I say, we can go in there now and we can enjoy ourselves. So that's that. So thanks for watching, and hope to see you again on the next vid. Cheers, guys.